final maintain.
Good evening and welcome to the Galactic Terrors transmission for February 2025. And Galactic Terrors is the online reading series that scours the known universe for scary stories, strange tales, weird horror, and all sorts of literary oddities from the most imaginative authors writing in a variety of fascinating genres. I'm Jim Chambers, and with me tonight is Carol Gyzander.
Hi, I volunteered to be the literary oddity for the evening, so that should be fun. Yeah.
We've got plenty of literary oddities to go around.
I think that's usually true. Yeah.
Well, I think Carol has hit a bit of a hiccup, or I've hit a bit of a hiccup, but just to get you all here, thank you for joining us. For those of you who are returning, welcome back, you brave, brave souls. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, Galactic Terrors broadcasts, oops, that's the wrong banner. All right, February is not our month. Galactic Terrors broadcasts every second Thursday of the month. You can find us on YouTube, which you can click subscribe below, like and subscribe to follow future Galactic Terror transmissions on YouTube. You can also find us on Facebook on the HWA NY Facebook page. And you can join our newsletter, which goes out once, twice, maybe 3 times a month, just to announce who's reading, when we're reading, and remind you that we're reading all of those nifty things.
Yes, yes.
Carol, welcome back. You seem like you were in carbonite there for a minute.
Yes, I got a little message that my internet connection was unstable. So I have a feeling that this is sort of like a trial run for April 1st. You know, that's just what we're doing tonight.
That's it. Well, what is today? January 44th, I think. 2025, right? The 45th of January. No,
right.
But we, despite our slight technical glitches, we have a fantastic lineup tonight.
Yes.
Do you want to share our readers?
Oh, I'm really excited. We have CHARLES BAROUCH, we have Rebecca Cuthbert, and we have Mercurio Rivera. And so we do this as a speculative fiction reading. Sometimes we're all horror. Sometimes we go all sci-fi. We've had mystery. We've had suspense. We've had fantasy folks on here. So we're mixing up a little horror and some hard sci-fi. So this is going to be a fun evening. Something to keep us on our toes, keep our brains tuned in. So this is going to be fun.
Yes, you never know quite what to expect from Galactic Terrors.
Yeah, but there's always a what if involved. So
exactly. And I will say, you may have noticed in the opening video a mention of Stephen Van Patten joining us as a guest tonight. Stephen is not joining us as a guest tonight. I know that's disappointing to anyone who got their hopes up. We always love having Stephen on. The good news is Stephen will be on Galactic Terrors very, very soon.
Yes, this is true. That's just one of those little Easter eggs for our April 1st. That's fun. Jim, what is behind you? You're very red.
I picked something red because tomorrow is Valentine's Day, and this is actually a haunted walk. It's a barn lit up. Look like it's full of ghostly redness, I guess.
Cool.
Portal to hell. It's on fire. I don't know. It's getting ready to take off and deliver Valentine's Day candy hearts to all of the on the naughty list. I don't really know. I just thought it looked good.
Yeah. Or are they candy hearts or are they real hearts? Could be either. Oh well. So that's fun. We're always excited to see people in the audience joining us. And as we have our readings and chat with our authors, please, you guys feel free to, put your comments in the chat or ask any questions that you might have of them. And we will try to pass those along to our authors as as we chat with them after their readings. So
Yes. And
but
some upcoming events that we have on
Mhm.
our notes here to talk about, one of which will be of special interest to those in the Long Island or New York area. It is a brand new horror convention coming February 28th to March 2nd called Long Island Convention of Horror, affectionately known as LITCH, which I thought was a very clever acronym for a horror con. And that will be taking place at the Hyatt Regency in Hauppauge, New York on Long Island. It's a convention with a myriad of horror-related content and a focus on writers, editors, indie filmmakers, and comic books. And it will feature horror experts and authors talking about well-known properties, workshops, films, musical programming. And the really great news is we're going to hear a little bit more about Lich later, because one of the programming folks for Lich is Charles Barouch, who will be one of our readers tonight.
yeah, I have a feeling we're gonna, get some questions answered and find out a little bit more about it. And many of us from our New York chapter will be there, which is going to be a lot of fun. So that's cool. So that's kind of cool. And of course, the other thing that many of us from Horror Writers Association know about that's coming up is StokerCon. And Jim, you are one of the gurus who knows all the StokerCon things. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
StokerCon 2025 will be taking place June 12th to the 15th at the Stamford Hotel, the Hilton Stamford Hotel in Stamford, Connecticut. So again, if you're in the tri-state area of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, or even in the region, we hope you'll come out and visit StokerCon. It's the HWA's annual convention where we do a lot of great stuff, panel programming, horror university workshops, the Anne Radcliffe Academic Conference, Librarians Day, which connects horror authors and readers with librarians. We have the Bram Stoker Award banquet and ceremony, so all of the nominees for the Bram Stoker Award will be watching us closely that night, I think. The Final Frame Film Competition, 13 short films of no more than 13 minutes, horror films, of course, and tons more that go on at StokerCon. So yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. And if you're local, you can always get there just for a day and see if it's something you want to come back for the next year. So
and there's also there's an option for virtual, right? Yeah.
Virtual, yes, there is a virtual version that you can check out. I'll dig up the link for that, but stokercon.com should have all the information. And our guests of honor this year are Adam Neville, Gabby Triana, Paula Garan, Tim Wagoner, Scott Edelman, and Joyce Carol Oates.
Awesome crowd. Awesome crowd. I swear it is my favorite convention out of all the ones I attend. So I learn so much, and I get to network with so many wonderful horror people. It's just terrific. And it's friendly and welcoming too, which is just pretty cool for a professional organization to also be friendly.
I find it fun. All right. So now that we've done the infomercial portion of the broadcast,
we paid our dues. Is that what you're saying? Yeah,
exactly.
No, we shared some good information. That's the way I like to look at it. Yeah.
Yes.
But I think it'd be really fun to just jump right into our readings. Sounds like a plan. Yeah.
Let's do it. Yes.
Well, let me tell you about our first reader. Charles Barouch has 5 stories in a cultural archive on the moon. If you're on Earth, you can find his stories on Kindle, Nook, and Kobo. Start with Tiago and the Masterless, a science fiction one, or Endless Hunger, horror, or anthologies published by Daniel Arthur Smith, Shebat Legion, Raventail, Celestial Echo Press, and more. He's published in science fiction, fantasy, horror, humor, Western genres, and he's not done yet. You can find more about him at his website, hdwp.com, and we'll put the link in the chat. So I'd like to let's all welcome Charles.
Hey everybody. I'm going to be reading from Meg's Moldy Oldies, which will be appearing in Shadows Without Light, which will be released either the end of this month or the beginning of next month. There used to be a hotel in the Catskills that I went to as a young girl. Well, the hotel is still there, but it's not for us humans. It's been given back to the plants and the mushrooms. And this is my first time returning, and I brought camping gear because, well, you know, my friend Gretchen came along with me. She's a sweet girl. I'm straight, so she won't say the things she might want to because she's not a creep and she won't make it weird that we're sharing the same tent. We're good like that. And for her, it's a chance to get some haunted photography, as she puts it. Me, I'm here to come to some sort of acceptance with what I've lost. It seems my childhood can vanish within my lifetime. And that's a hard thing. I mean, we all want to be remembered to have mattered, but everything fades so damn quickly. Gretchen has 6 cameras. She has physical notebooks. I have my tent, my sleeping bag, a change of socks, and one other thing. All right, bear with me one moment. She's got 2 duffel bags of clothing, and we're only going to be here overnight. And the contrast doesn't end there. She's squealing with joy as she walks the ruins, and I'm sinking into a morose stupor. I unload my rucksack to set up the tent and do all the busy work of camping, and when it's all done, I take out the urn from the bottom of the sack. And Gretchen doesn't know about that part, and I don't want her to know. And if I see her heading back, I'll put it out of sight. You see, Dad was cremated last week, and that's another part of my life gone, and I've kept that from Gretchen, too. Looking at the urn, I try to imagine what Dad would think of this place. Broken windows, vines growing out into the ground floor rooms, rows of mushrooms dotting the tall grass, squirrels playing in the rain puddles that have formed in the remains of the outdoor pool. It looks like a dystopian backdrop, like a set piece for a movie full of angsty teens who are destined to prevail. I hear Gretchen returning, so I grab the urn and it spills, and the wind picks up, and he's more gone than he's present. And I can't help myself. I start weeping, and she comes over to see why. And it was my original plan to take his remains out to the back to the lake and scatter them there, and to do it without being seen. And instead, with Gretchen's help, I collect some of what the wind hasn't taken, and I give that part of him to the lake. It's the 10-year anniversary of Dad's death, and I haven't seen Gretchen at all in the last 5 years, but she remembers. She comes back into my life and insists we should visit the place where I scattered his ashes. I remember that moment when I accidentally did. That was then, this is now. She and I are alone in my tiny living room of my tiny apartment that I share with 3 not tiny roommates. Got everything, Gretchen asks? Why did I agree to this, I ask her. You didn't. You merely didn't say no, Gretchen says. I regret losing touch, Meg. Let's do this for you. I mean, you're already packed. Let's go honor your dad. You've only ever met him once or twice, I remind her. I carried his ashes to the lake, Meg. I'm part of this, entwined. The car ride is long and awkward, and it just underscores how big a gulf there can be between 2 people. I mean, we were thick as thieves in college. We stayed close for a few years after, but then I got a girlfriend, she got a husband, we drifted, and now here we are, her talking about 2 kids in preschools, and me talking about my failed art career, and Gretchen doesn't take pictures anymore, and I don't dance, which was a thing when we first met. We can't even agree on music for the drive. She's gotten into this boring, repetitive speed metal, and I've been digging up old standards from before I was born, and there's frustration on her face, same as mine, and we both wanted this to go better, to be a reunion of sorts. Other than two pee breaks, we drive straight through. Arriving at sunset, I make up the tent, I set up a fire circle, I do anything to avoid the stilted conversation. She walks around and I lose track of her after a bit, and she's not back when I'm out of things to do. So I start looking for her. The moon is high, so I can see the places where her footprints matted the tall grass, and it's already starting to spring back up, so I quicken my pace, and it looks like she went inside, and that's a bad idea. Buildings were made to last, but it's been more than 10 years of nature clawing them back, and I'm not really worried so much about the place falling down around our heads, but there's other dangers. I mean, animals living inside, toxic mold spores, all sorts of ways to die. Once I'm inside, I lose the trail because the worn carpeting doesn't tattle like the grass did. And it's fairly dark. I mean, the big window's letting moonlight wherever the creeping vines don't block it. And I'm concerned with her, but at the same time, I'm flooded with memories. I mean, for a while, we'd come here every summer. That's a lot of firsts and lasts and other milestones. So I head for the bar. There is this so-called teen disco area behind it. That's where I had my first kiss. It's where I let a boy over the clothes feel me up for the first time. Not the same boy, not the same trip, but lacking a better idea, I walk that way. There's no sign of Gretchen, but something else catches my eye. The old jukebox. This room is far enough inside that I can only see because my eyes have adjusted to the dark. There's no windows, and the lights haven't worked in a long time, I'm sure. It didn't used to be next to the bar, the jukebox. Must have been moved after I stopped coming here. Hard to think of this place having an in-between, a time when it was still functioning as a hotel, but no longer a destination of mine. I walk over to see what songs it has, and the knobs to turn the menu are mechanical, so they still work. So I start going through them, and it's some great stuff. I mean, what I can squint read through the dust. And it's a shame there's no power, because if I played one of these, Gretchen would show up to change the selection. I reach into my pocket to find some change, a last offering for the juke. 75 cents, it says on the slot. I remember when it was 2 songs for a quarter. I come up with 60 cents, best I can do. I feed the coins into the unlit machine. They make a satisfying clink clink as they arrive inside. That won't work, a male voice says from behind me. I turn and take a step back. It hadn't occurred to me that we weren't alone, and that Gretchen and I had more to fear than animals and mold. I'm just looking for a friend, I say. I'm not here alone. There's something off about his face. Not that I can see it well, but his skin looks, well, bumpy. He's tall. He looks like a teen that hasn't grown into his limbs, and that doesn't make me feel any safer. I recall a suppressed memory, Bobby something. He pulls the jukebox plug out of the wall and pushes it into a batch of mushrooms growing their way up the bar. It lights up. He makes a selection. Tony Bennett's voice rises into the air. But I didn't put enough money, I say. Not the weirdest part, but somehow that's what comes out of my mouth. And in the colored light of the juke, I can see the man boy more clearly. He's made of mushrooms. I mean, fingers, cheeks, eyes, all made stranger by the crazy shadows falling over it, but it's a kind face. Human despite not being flesh, and I should be scared, but somehow this fungus fellow is less frightening than being alone with a strange man. Can I have this dance, he asks. I should find my friend and leave, I tell him. No, you should stay. Both of you should, he says, holding his arms out to encourage me to dance. She has a family, I tell him. I don't, nor a job I'd miss, no friends really, not anymore. I could stay. But Gretchen? She'll stay because she loves you. How could your father's ashes. We could see it because he could see it. You could be in here with his memories. We could call you Super Pumpkin like he used to. We could tell you stories about your childhood. Dad only ever met her 3 times, but he could see it. He knew you didn't, so he said nothing. Come and stay. Feel his warmth. I take his hand, his mushroomy hand, and we dance to Tony Bennett. I haven't danced in forever, and if I stay, I won't ever have to stop. His right arm slides around my waist, and the song ends, and it immediately starts up again. We continue to dance. Gretchen runs into the room. She hits his shoulders with her fists. Her hands pass through the mushrooms as they part, and then they tighten back up, trapping her wrists. And there's this uncomfortable pressure in the way he's holding me now. He's trapped us both, and despite this, he keeps up the dance. Gretchen digs in her heels. I don't want to. I'm willing to surrender. But if he's right, if she loves me, I owe it to her to fight, so I dig in my heels. The carpet holds, we hold, his movement stops. The music continues without us. You could have it all, he tells me, his arm nearly crushing my waist. Stay, have her, have your dad, forever. It's easy to forget your own agency, to surrender, but it occurs to me that just as he's holding me, I'm holding him. I start to tighten my grip and I pivot. Gretchen catches on immediately and twists in the other direction, and our mushroom jailer splits in two, his top half following the tug of Gretchen's trapped arms, his lower half held fast in my embrace. The human would have died. He isn't. He doesn't. But he does lose his shape for a moment, starts puddling to the floor as a pile of discarded fungus. We take that as our cue to flee, each of us pulling the remains of him from our bodies as we run for the exit. But even as we put miles between us and the carcass of a hotel, we won't truly escape. Because behind us, Tony Bennett still sings, "I've got you under my skin." It's one of the 8 stories that will be in the collection.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
It is all at the same time gruesome, heartbreaking, and icky. Puddle of fungus, yes.
Yes.
So this is, tell us the title of the story again, please.
So the story is called Meg's Golden Oldies, and it's going to be in a new collection that's called Shadows Without Light that'll come out either the end of this month or next month. It's already with the editor. The covers are already done. We're just waiting for the edits and the formatting, and then we'll get that out there for everybody to read.
All right. And is this was this your first outing with fungal horror?
Well, Dark Spores kind of inspired me. I sent it in. It didn't quite make the cut, but I just felt it belonged to have a home somewhere. So I'm glad that I got a chance to put it out.
That's great. And I'm going to give Rebecca Cuthbert, who'll be coming up to read in a minute, credit for coining sporer to discuss that.
I love it.
Yes. So
that's wonderful.
Should pop that into our chat behind the scenes. I thought it was great. So I'm curious. Okay, you have 5 stories in a cultural archive on the moon. How did that come about? What are the stories?
So Samuel Peralta is an amazing person, and amongst other things, got the opportunity to build a cultural time capsule that was going to be set up on one of the landers, and it went up with the Peregrine lander and got burned up. So yes, NASA's the good guys, but they did burn 5 of my books.
Oh no.
But they then sent it back up with the Odysseus lander, so it did make it to the moon. And Sam's goal was to create a cultural archive. So there's indigenous art, there's statuary, there's all sorts of things in there, but there's a section on contemporary fiction. And he extended to Shebat Legion and to Daniel Arthur Smith the opportunity to put their entire collections as part of it. And since Shebat's published me 3 times and Daniel's published me twice, through no fault of my own, 5 of my stories are on the moon. And the sad part is one of them's about a werewolf who's now permanently on the moon. So
that's ironic, or at least fitting, if not ironic. So that's amazing. And if anyone has questions for Charles, go ahead and put them in the chat. But I'm going to keep asking you about this because I find it fascinating. And this is maybe a goofy question, but do you know what part of the moon it's on?
So yeah, it's in the South Polar region. If you look up the Odysseus lander, it's physically attached to the lander. It went with the lander and it stays there. And 61 countries have ratified that it's significantly important to mankind that we have this kind of a cultural archive kept off of Earth, where wars and other things can't immediately challenge it.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's a testament to Sam. It's a testament to Daniel and Shebat. I'm just somebody who got swept up in all of it, and I'm grateful. But yeah, it's kind of a nice validation that when people look up at the moon, they're looking at my writing.
And this almost, it could be a prompt for something, a story, an anthology. But I'm curious about your take. Let's say extraterrestrials reach the moon before they reach Earth and discover your story. What are they going to do? Are they going to turn back?
Well, the problem is one of them actually is about how to invade Earth. And I wrote it not knowing where it was going to end up. But interestingly enough, I did a story for another anthology, Novo Pulp, a long time ago. And the story is called Final Advice, and it's about writing a message to the future that you don't know who's going to read.
Oh, okay.
So I have very much thought about what you're talking about.
Very cool. So if we look out our windows one day and see the saucers in the skies, we'll know they followed your blueprint.
Let's hope not. That piece was a humor piece, kind of, sort of, even with all the murder in it.
Well, and I'm curious too. Now you've written in a lot of different genres. Your intro had a book cover with a big shark.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit
So
about that book. That's because you told me not too long ago you were writing a bunch of underwater or nautical horror.
yeah. So I have to say this the proper way. A friend in Texas introduced me to a friend in the Philippines, who introduced me to a publisher in England who has offices in Pennsylvania, so this New Yorker could write westerns. That's the beginning of that story.
All right.
Um, I wrote 3 westerns for Nick Whale for his Dusty Saddle in print. One of them got published, and then he looked at me and said, "Look, 2 of my competitors collapsed. I've got a billion better named authors. Can you pivot to horror?" I said, "Sure." I gave him a story called The Great Sunken Ones, which is my take on doing a non-H.P. Lovecraft kind of story. And
Got
then
it.
he said to me, "I need more sea beast horror. Here's a cover. Can you put a story under it in 30 days?" So I wrote Endless Hunger. And then I followed it with Endless Thirst. And the cover that we showed is the 3rd book in that trilogy, which came out in December, which is Endless Feast, which finishes that story arc.
Okay.
It's also merged with another trilogy. So you can read them standalone, either trilogy, but if you read them together, you find out the parts you didn't get from the other one. And the other one is The Sunken Ones, which is followed by The Sunken Betrayal. And I'm right now writing the last few thousand words of The Sunken War, which will complete that trilogy, and that should be out end of February, beginning of March. But yes, I've been doing a tremendous amount of sea beast horror, and I'm doing a lot of collaborates. When we come back and we say, so what are you working on? I've got a list. And I'm enjoying collaborating, and my list is really full for 2025, but I'm looking for people for 2026. The one thing I will quickly shout out to is Kleptogenesis, A Twisted DNA, which I'm doing with Ian Herrick. It's already out. Its sequel is in my inbox. I need to read through it and do edits. It's an 80-20. He did the bulk of the writing on it, but it's body horror. And the first book is amazing, and the second book adds mil-spec to that. And it's really, really tight. It's just cinematic.
That's great. So blending a lot of different elements from different genres. And
Yep.
I love the fact that aquatic horror can have so many subgenres. That I love sea beast horror as a descriptor.
Yep.
Is terrific. You know exactly what you're dealing with. And just to quickly jump to the chat, I think Teal had a good take on your invasion on the how to invade Earth story on the moon. What if they're coming for autographs for your work, Charles?
We have very strict security. They'll have to get permission, but other than that, sure. I like my fans.
And Teal notes he has 2 stories in that collection as well on the moon. So
Yep.
I guess we can legitimately call you both lunatics.
And not just for this.
Sorry for that.
But anytime you want to compare me to Teal, I'm good with it. He is my spirit animal. I watch him, January, he puts up a post saying, "I am blessed. I've published 33 stories so far this year." And I look at it, it's like, it's January, Teal. And I write faster.
He is prolific. Yes. It is a marvel. But I'm wondering, Teal also writes in a lot of different genres, and a lot of authors that have come on Galactic Terrors do. And I always wonder, what do you have a genre that you consider sort of your home genre when you're just sitting around and you just want to write for yourself? Is there one you gravitate to?
So I will absolutely tell you that it's fantasy, but I'll also tell you it's the thing I've been published the least in the genres I've done. So it's where I gravitate, but I've published more science fiction. I've published much more horror at this point. I've published humor more than I've published fantasy.
Wow.
It's one of those weird things. I was a journalist for a long time and told people I was a fiction writer and could only show them published journalism. So one of these days I will sit down and I will start churning the fantasy the way that I really want to.
What kind of fantasy do you like to write? High fantasy, barbarian fantasy, sword and sandal?
I like to write stuff that's kind of low fantasy. It's not so much the kings and the castles, it's what's happening with the common people. I have a wonderful piece called Tikala's Promise, which it's been sidelined forever. It needs to find the right publisher. but a guy by the name of Aaron Hodel, who does the most amazing miniature figures commercially and does some of the most amazing art you can imagine, handed me a cover and said, "What can you do with it?" And it's the entire dwarven enclave in this one giant print. And I bought the print when he put it out, and I wrote the story of the laziest dwarf in that dwarven enclave. And one of these days it'll see the light of day.
That's terrific. Yeah, it's always nice to come at the genre from a different angle, an unexpected perspective. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for reading with us. We're going to have you back on at the end after the other readers to talk about other things that you have coming up next. And I promised we would hear from you on Lich, so we'll talk about that when you come back too. And we're going to head on to our next reader now. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
All right. Our next reader is Rebecca Cuthbert. Rebecca writes dark fiction and poetry. She loves ghost stories, folklore, witchy women, and anything that involves nature getting revenge. Her titles include In Memory of Exoskeletons, Creep This Way, Self-Made Monsters, Down in the Dark Deep, Where the Puddlers Dwell, and 6 O'Clock House and Other Strange Tales. For more information, you can go to linktr.ee, rebeccacuthbertwrites, and we'll put that link in the chat. All right. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. First, thank you, James, for that introduction, and thank you to James and Carol for inviting me back. Galactic Terrors is a great program, and I'm proud to be here. Tonight, I'm going to be reading from my brand new collection, 6 O'Clock House and Other Strange Tales, and that just came out in late January from Water Tower Hill Publishing. It's a collection of dark magical realism. There is some horror in here, but there are some happy endings too. I'm not going to read you one of them first, but this is Tumbling After. It's a flash piece based on the Jack and Jill nursery rhyme. It wasn't a pail of water. It was a jailer's daughter. But like most of women's history, especially women in love, our story was polished into something smooth, something pretty for children. We weren't children. I was 19. She was 20. Anna. Saying her name is like a cherry in my mouth still. Her dad found out, careful as we were, that August night in the barn, her hair against the summer hay, my fingers tangled in it. He saw the lantern, saw us before we heard him, and then there was the raging and cursing. Lantern knocked over, bales alight, and our terrified flight into the woods, up the hill. Jack was a slack-mouthed stable boy, roused from his stupid sleep to stop us while Anna's father doused the flames, yelling after him to bring her home. She'd be straightened out, shut in her room until she broke. I'd be flogged or worse, corrupter that I was. Taught a hard lesson in the brutish ways of men. Anna's father could only confine and punish. What did he know of love, of loving? We made it a mile before Jack caught up, flinging himself at Anna from the dark, clutching her cloak and wrapping a filthy arm around her perfect neck. She screamed and then choked, trying, I knew, to call my name, Jillian. How could I leave her? I turned back, found a branch, thick as a fence post and heavy. Creeping behind him, I swung hard, every day of kneading dough and loading wagons, preparing me for that awful moment. Jack dropped like a stone in a well. His body slid backward, head busted open and eyes rolling up, moonlight glinting on empty whiteness. I kicked his dead hand away from my foot. Anna struggled to her feet, sobbing words I couldn't make out. I threw down the branch and reached for her, and that's when I heard the barking. Her father had loosed the hunting dogs. We didn't have much time. They'd find Jack, find us, but I had a chance to save her. I kissed her and yelled, "Go," pushing her on, spinning us apart. I moved too fast for her to stop me. They could do their worst, but not to Anna. They couldn't have my love. In my descent, I did fall, more than once, on damp, slick moss and rocks I couldn't see. The hounds followed me as far as the river, where I crossed into the next county and lost them, though the rushing water almost did me in. Hiding and thieving, I circled back 3 days later, spying in windows and listening near stable doors. They discovered Jack's body, but Anna was missing, despite her father's furious search. I said a prayer of thanks and slipped away, back to the shadows of the woods. I've lost count now of the years alone, but we'll find each other again, I know. There's more to our love than one life and what's next. Some things men can't take. Okay, so that was Tumbling After in its entirety. Next, I'm going to read part of a story, which I know is kind of a dirty trick. This one is called Infested, and it was inspired by all the past selves that you have to face when you go through therapy. Viv noticed the first one about 2 months after she started therapy. A knee-high figure scrambling to hide behind the refrigerator. It had pigtails. It wore tie-dye. When she got up the nerve to look, it was gone, though she could hear it giggling. Maybe it had gotten into the walls, like that squirrel last fall. The next one she saw was gawky and awkward. Weird long arms dangling and knobby knees full of scabby, half-healed scrapes. It ran into the dark, damp place beneath the cellar stairs, and it would not come out, though Viv tried to lure it with a trail of cheese doodles. She really got worried when she spotted a third. This one was much bigger, and she recognized it from her goth phase. It scoffed and smirked. She chased it with a broom, but just when she thought she could shoo it out the back door, it juked left and ran upstairs. She heard the closet door slam. It was probably going to burn incense and smoke clove cigarettes in there, and Viv's clothes would stink like fermented hippies. Afterward, a fourth showed, and then a fifth and a sixth, wearing all the bad hairstyles she'd ever tried, all the horrid clothes she'd thought could remake her. The miniskirts that left her ass hanging out, and the baggy hoodies she wore like tents. She lost count after 12. They crept behind her and scattered when she whirled to face them. They skittered like roaches, hiding from the light. Sometimes she felt one breathing down the back of her neck, and if she gave it the satisfaction of screaming, it would run away, laughing, shrieking, "I got her," in her own voice. All those messy, wretched former selves. Viv had tried to forget the drunken one tripping over its feet in the kitchen, the one that sobbed all night in the spare bedroom, so loud Viv couldn't sleep. She banged on the wall, and that self banged back and cried louder out of spite. There was a violent one, too, angry all the time. Its twisted face was almost unrecognizable as her own, and it often pinched Viv so hard that blood blisters formed on her thighs and the backs of her arms. She begged it to stop, but it just laughed its mean laugh and sauntered away. They became a bigger problem as days stretched to weeks. They ate her food and used all of her expensive shampoo. They spilled red wine on the carpet and stuck gum between the couch cushions, rented X-rated pay-per-view movies, and bought jewelry from the home shopping network with her credit card. They pulled her hair and clung to her legs and mismatched all of her socks. They licked the doorknobs and chewed her shoes like hyper puppies. She hated them, and she wanted them gone. Her therapist was no help, Dr. Agda. When Viv had told her about the infestation, she said, in her voice that was always an octave more chipper than called for, "The only way out is through, Vivian. You're doing the work, but it's a process." And Viv said, okay, though she didn't really believe her. And they did another session, but that only brought another rogue self, this time from the future. Bagged skin and age spots, muttering, "Where's Thomas? Where's Thomas?" Viv didn't know anyone named Thomas. So Viv canceled her next appointment. She wouldn't invite more of those horrible things. She wouldn't make it worse. Already, her little house was overrun, and she missed deadlines at work. When she forgot about an important meeting with a client company at the ad agency, her boss told her to take some time off. Viv said no. Her boss said it was forced vacation or suspension, her choice. She took the vacation days. She tried poison first. She bought a dozen donuts and shook on some crystallized rat poison that blended in with the sprinkles. She left the box on the kitchen table, took a seat, and waited. The toddler self came out from behind the fridge and sniffed the air. It clutched a raggedy stuffed elephant to its chest and had dried snot on its shirt. At first, Viv thought, do it, eat one. One down is one gone. And the little thing did reach for one, the biggest one with the most sprinkles, and it brought the donut closer to its mouth. But before it could take a bite, Viv slapped the tainted food out of the thing's tiny hand. It wailed and ran, retreating to its hidey hole. Viv hung her head and cried. Then she straightened up and threw away the donuts, kicking the trash can after she banged the lid closed. She couldn't even kill one pesky little invader. She was soft. She was a coward and a quitter. Disgusted, she went to bed. She didn't get up until well into the next afternoon. She thought next of what people did when they wanted vermin gone, but didn't have the stomach to kill them. Humane traps. The local hardware store didn't sell anything big enough, just little sizes to trap chipmunks and mice, the next size up for squirrels and groundhogs. But online, she found one made for trapping, among other things, stray dogs, feral hogs, and bobcats. Viv paid for express delivery. 2 days later, the trap was set and ready in the living room, an open bottle of Cabernet inside for bait. She would probably catch the drunk self first. She knew how much it liked red wine. It had the purple teeth and stained clothing to prove it. To sweeten the pot, she added a Nirvana CD and a bag of peanut M&Ms. Then she ducked behind the couch. But that space was already occupied. Viv found herself crouching next to her teen self, black lipstick smeared and crooked eyeliner making it look like a mime in the rain. That self used to light paper towel dispensers on fire in the school bathrooms with a shoplifted Zippo. It stole from classmates' lockers and threw the loot in the ditch behind the soccer field because it never really wanted what it took. The teen self smirked. "Nice shirt," it said. "Makes you look like a cartoon bee." Viv ignored it. She didn't point out that its ripped fishnets were cliched. She just stared at her hands, clasped over her knees, a knot in her stomach, wanting to catch one of the assholes, and also not sure what she'd do with it if she did. Could she just set it free out by the airport? If she didn't take it far enough, it would only find its way back. Then came a loud click and a snap and a howl of pain. Viv jumped up. It was the sad one from upstairs. It had tried to crawl just partway in, reaching for the goodies, and the trap had snapped closed on its ankle. Blood dripped. The thing howled again. Viv made the mistake of looking at its face. Her, at about 25. Probably just after Mike had left her. Its face was puffy, ice-tortured, wet orbs. "Oh no," said Viv. She got up and pried the trap open. The self that had gotten stuck there shuttled backward, but before it could hobble away, Viv said, "Wait." She reached in and got the M&Ms, handed them to that self, and tugged it toward the bathroom by its too thin wrist. She sat it down on the edge of the tub. She said, "Let me see." The thing was scared, but it gave Viv its foot. Blood smeared onto Viv's pajama pants. "I'm sorry," said Viv. "I just don't know what to do. I'm sorry, okay? I'm just sorry." The self sitting on the tub kept crying and did not respond. Viv reached under the sink, rustled around, found antibiotic ointment and bandages. None was big enough, so she thought to make an anklet of 6 of them, stuck on perpendicular to the deep cut, making sure it was covered after she'd cleaned it with a soapy washcloth, satisfied it wouldn't get infected. By the time she was done, the self had stopped crying. Viv looked up from her first aid job. The sad self was shoving M&Ms into its mouth by the handful, so many Viv was surprised it didn't choke. It held out the bag to her and shook it a little. An invitation, an offer. "Thanks," said Viv, and took a few. They sat together until they had polished off the bag. The self didn't talk, but Viv did. "You're better off," she said, still chewing. "Really, do you know who he married? His third cousin, Amber. We met her at a family reunion. I'm serious. And remember how much he talked about fantasy football, like all the time? And he had that gross friend, Sid, who came over every weekend? The one whose ass crack always hung out. Please, don't be sad. Not over him." The self sitting on the edge of the tub was smiling by then, just a little, and Viv smiled back. And then she laughed, and that self laughed too. And just when tears pricked her eyes, because it was so stupid, whoever got sad about someone like Mike was so dumb. The self across from her faded, like fog in sunlight. "No," Viv said, but she didn't know why she said that. And she reached out to grab its hand, but her hand closed on the empty candy bag, and she was alone in the bathroom. "One down then," Viv said, and she didn't know why she wasn't happier. I will stop there. And again, that is my new collection, 6 O'Clock House and Other Strange Tales.
Oh man, you're killing me here. I've been planning to buy this, and now, of course, I have to run out and get it right away. So, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing those words. Wow.
Thank you.
Wow. I lots of good feedback in the chat, but I just have to show you what Liam Burke says. Hopeful and dreadful at the same time. Very cool.
Oh, thanks, Liam.
Yeah. Wow. And boy, that's an image. I remember the first story of yours that I think I ever read was a number of years ago, and it took place in the nursing home, and there was the older lady there. That was an amazing story. Now, was that in Soul Scream? Where was that story? Do you remember?
Yes, that was in Soul Scream, edited by Chris Ryan. And it is The Quilting Circle of Bygone Gardens, and it is about a witch coven at a nursing home.
Yes. And the first thing I read, I was like, we need more of her work. Yeah.
Thank you.
That was cool. The very first one that you read is like, oh my God, I'm like feeling this here because I love stories and I love writing stories that tell us a different version of what we thought we knew. And, I like doing a twisted Shakespeare kind of thing. And so that is just so emotionally grabbing and intent. Very, really just grabbed us and pulled us up the mountain and down the mountain. yeah, for very reason. So that's just me gushing a little bit, but
thanks.
Yeah. So this anthology has been in the top 100 on Amazon for a good while, hasn't it?
Yes, we have been in the top 100 for a while. I think we made it down to number 17, number 16, one of those.
Cool.
But I'm happy to hover. So
Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool. No, that's really exciting. So, what? And I should call it collection, not anthology. What was it like putting all your stories together? How did you decide what to put into this?
Well, it's kind of funny because this is the 5th book published, but it's my first book written.
Mm-hmm.
And it was tough to find it a home because it's really not like straight horror. Like there are horror influence here for sure. And there are certainly like creepy stories and there's a creature feature and all that good stuff. But it's really magical realism. It's weird tales, capital W, weird tales, strange tales. And it's hard to find that kind of genre, like a publisher willing to mix up genres.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. And collections are hard also because unless we are Stephen King, people don't necessarily want to buy a book of all of our stories. But what to you is cool or significant about short stories? What do you like about that format?
I love short stories, and I'm writing I'm finishing up my first novel now, but I still think that short stories are always going to be my favorite thing to write. There's something that is so nice about being able to encapsulate a whole world and a whole story in 2 to 20 pages or whatever.
And when you're putting together a story or you're starting one, you're thinking about it, what is the inspiration? How do you focus in on something that will fit in that word count?
Well, for this collection, so many of the stories are blue collar protagonists, and they're based on jobs I've had and people I've known and places I've been to. There are a few stories in here that are very, very near and dear to me because I can remember those spaces in crystal clear perfection. So for me, I want to visit this space and I want to leave an impression, and I want it to be clean. I'm excited about my novel, and it's part of a trilogy, but novels aren't clean. Novels have several, their narrative arcs look sort of like an EKG machine, at a hospital. And I really just love the clean arc of a short story.
You gave me a really amazing visual. I picture the person at the gym who's got those big long ropes. They hold the end and they do this with the ropes, and you've got the sine waves going, and that's a novel. And a short story is the whip, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Just like
I think the variety. This isn't a huge book. This is the paperback copy. Not a huge book, but it has 16 stories in it. And there are a few flash, but it's like there's so much variety in one book. And I think that sometimes collections are helpful when people are busy and they don't have a lot of time. If you have a half an hour coffee break, you can read a story and you can read the whole thing.
Yeah, or somebody sitting there waiting to pick up their kid at school, or there's waiting for the bus or taking the bus or whatever.
Doctor's office, waiting room, whatever, So I love collections for that reason, just like these little bites that you can take.
It's way better than the magazines they have there. Way better.
Exactly. Yeah, that too.
Yeah,
but I think
that's true.
I think that short stories, speculative fiction, short stories, let you do things that you couldn't get away with in a novel. Because you'd have to sustain them. And there's a certain amount of explanation with sustaining something, and might fall apart a little bit, like paper mache and water, But in a short story, I can give folks a premise like a woman's in therapy and her past selves invade her house. And it's like for 10 pages or whatever, I think people are willing to go there with me. I don't know that they would be willing to go there for
300
pages
yeah.
with me.
Yeah. That's a good point. And we would know way too much about way too many different lines. Yeah. So,
but I just love, getting a weird idea and being able to run with it for a little while, and then being able to put it down before I ruin it.
Cool. So do you like to do events like readings and such? You're an excellent reader.
Thank you. My next one is coming up. I'm going to be a guest at Spirited Giving, which is the Author Con pre-party. So that's March 27th, and I'm really excited. I get to be a guest alongside DM Gay and Jamie Flanagan. I get to hang out with my buddy James Sabata and an S.A. Bradley, and a live performance of Midnight Pals is happening. Like, it's going to be a really great time. So I hope people will come out and join us.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Hey, we have a question from Rob Grimoire. What genre would you like to explore next?
Hi, Rob. Rob, I do not know how to do this yet, but I'm going to take some classes and I'm going to learn. I would love to write mystery. I would love to learn how to write mystery. And I have some mysterious stuff, maybe happening in some of my stories. And I have a mystery in a novella that I wrote that hasn't been published yet. But the real genre of mystery, I would love to learn how to do that.
I think that's a fascinating idea because, in my opinion, every story has some degree of mystery in it, because if it didn't, we already know what would happen, and why would we read it? Right. And so I think going into the mystery genre, though, it's more specific focus on a lot of those things. So that'd be really interesting. Yeah.
It's like mathematical, and I'm not good at math. So I would have to, my stories are just kind of crazy, and I can decide where they're going midway through, but you have to know a mystery structure, and you have to have, dead ends and false leads, and you have to know where it's going, and you have to know who did it and how you're going to get there. So right now it's not in my skill set, but I'm going to work on it.
That's very cool. And I have one other question for you as well, because you've also written a nonfiction book, about helping authors and such. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yes. So our mutual friend, Chris Ryan, is the publisher at Seamus and Nunzio. And he contacted me last October. How many Octobers ago? I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I lose track.
It's Blur's Day. Every day is Blur's Day now.
Okay, two Octobers ago. And he said, hey, I have this idea for a book, and I think you should write it. And Chris got to know me real quick, because I think I had chapter ideas to him by lunch or something that day.
Do you want to see my surprise face? Yeah.
So we were just excited. We tossed chapters back and forth. Like I was tossing him a chapter to edit, and he was throwing me a new idea. And we got that whole thing done in 3 months, because we really wanted to put it out in January of 2024.
Cool.
So we did that one fast, and a brand new version of it just came out.
Oh, fun!
So we expanded it. We've added a bunch of things to it, and so if you get a copy and it's got this little sticker on the front, it was a 2024 Golden Scoop nominee. So if it's got the little scoop, then you know you have got the newest version with the bonus material added.
Of Creep This Way. Oh, that's awesome.
Creep This Way. Yep.
Thank you. I just wanted you to remind us what that was. That's terrific.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. We'll have you come back in the end and tell us a little bit more about any other new things you have coming up. So thanks for joining us. And what I would love to do is introduce our last reader. Mercurio D. Rivera's short fiction has run Readers Awards for Asimov's and Interzone magazines, and has appeared in markets such as the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, Lightspeed, I09, Nature, Black Static, and various anthologies, podcasts, and Year's Bests collections. His novel, Wergen, The Alien Love War, and we're going to have to ask and see if I said that right, which was published by Nook Press, was nominated for the Arthur C. Clarke Award and tells stories of unrequited love set against the backdrop of humanity's complicated relationship with an enigmatic alien species. His Asimov story, Beyond the Tattered Veil of Stars, was podcast by Dust Studios and features Gillian Jacobs of Community and Justin Kirk of Weeds, and is available anywhere you listen to podcasts. He also hosts the Nerd Count podcast with Matthew Kressel. Welcome and join us.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and thank you to Carol and Jim for having me on. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from a sci-fi horror novelette that appeared in Asimov's magazine. And to set this up, this story is set aboard a colossal spaceship called the Seed. And all of its passengers are in hibernation. And the protagonist, Dr. Emilio Garcia, is a psychiatrist who's been woken prematurely by the ship's AI to help treat one of the other travelers, a woman named Angie Velasquez, who's also been woken up by nightmares. And dreaming and nightmares shouldn't be possible while in space sleep. In this scene, he travels across the empty, city-sized spaceship to go see Angie and help her. So this is called In the Stillness Between the Stars. Emilio stood at the dimly lit station and pressed the tram button. He strode to the front of the platform, and with each step, the phosphor strip lining the floor lit the area 10 feet ahead of him. With the city lights and the hollow sun turned off, it felt as if he was navigating a dark dream. He'd seen the city ship from this vantage point when he first boarded the Seed, and had felt overwhelmed by its immensity. The towering hull scrapers and verdant parks, the wide streets jammed with transport vehicles, the central lake with ferries skimming the surface of still waters. The sprawling city, larger than Beijing, seemed infinite, the ship's curves creating the illusion of an endless blue horizon. But now, as he stood alone on the silent platform and stared into the distance, all he could see was darkness. In 2 minutes, the empty tram pulled into the station. The doors slid open and he took a seat in the vacant car, lit faintly in the violet phosphor glow. Lee 3, he said, as the tram accelerated into the abyss, please show me a copy of Ms. Velasquez's full bio file, including medical records. Sure thing, Doc, the AI spoke into his earpiece. He expected the text to appear instantly in midair, but nothing happened. After a few seconds, he repeated his request. Heard you the first time, Lee 3 said. Interesting. I can't access it. There seems to be some corruption in the bio file. Corruption, he said? How is that possible? The AI, the data files, in fact, most of the tech that allowed for construction of the Seed originated in the library. And the alien catalogers weren't known for defective tech. Sure, maintenance was required, but with 100,000 passengers all in stasis, the Seed's tech had barely been used yet. 30 minutes later, the tram pulled into the aft 3 stop. Emilio exited onto the desolate station platform and stared ahead into the darkness. High above, a faint light shone in a window. He headed toward it, the pathway lighting up in front of him with each step. His footsteps echoed in the stillness, creating the impressions of someone following him. Eventually, he reached the sliding glass doors of the medical facility. He crossed the cavernous lobby and rode the elevator to the 76th floor, then walked to the suite number Lee 3 had given him. Dr. Garcia, the young woman said, opening the door, extending her hands. Angie Velasquez, I'm sorry to wake you. She wore an engineer's bomber jacket, her hair swept back into a ponytail. Dark creases underlined her deep brown eyes. 8 months sleep is plenty, he said. I feel refreshed. As he shook her hand, she directed him to the cushioned sofa. Sorry about the lighting in here. I'm getting used to it, he said. She made small talk about the city ship and the upcoming layover in orbit around Pluto before he gently redirected the conversation. She raised an eyebrow when he explained the difficulties accessing her bio file. It's hard to describe my problem in a way that doesn't make me sound... She smiled as the words trailed off, pain etched on her face. Her eyes filled with tears. You recognize you need help, he said. That's a good sign, Angie. It suggests things aren't as bad as you might think. I do need help, she said, wiping her nose with her sleeve. She had a constant, nervous sniffle. I'm just not sure what kind. Tell me what's troubling you. She hesitated. During prep for boarding the Seed, she shook her head, took a breath, and started over. I worked for Incelicor out of Mexico City for the past 5 years. My husband, Mark, and I studied library tech, specifically engineering, and worked on a number of high-profile projects, the NAM European Air Rail, Polar Solar, the Antarctic Megawell, a few others. But when we learned about the Seed, about the project to terraform New Earth, we knew we'd found our mission in life, I mean. I understand, he said, thinking about his own passion for the Seed project, his own sacrifices. Ever since our post-grad days, Mark and I had studied the plans and development to travel to Proxima B. This was back before it had been christened New Earth. We even dipped our toes into the ion sail research, developed some expertise so we could add value beyond ordinary library engineering. He smiled at the phrase, ordinary library engineering. Humanity had left ordinary far behind after discovery of the alien library hidden in the ripples of a gravity wave, an entire database transmitted through microscopic rips in the fabric of space-time. We applied to join the crew, she said. You can imagine our excitement when we both made the cut, a dream come true. But there was a complication. She lowered her eyes. Our 4-year-old, Sophia. We weren't just making a choice about our own lives, but about her future as well, an irrevocable one. No doubt, he said. He thought of the life he'd left behind, his son, Tomas, his family, his friends, but the thrill, the wonder of the mission to New Earth had overridden his guilt. Initially, Mark and I were on the same page. Then he started to have doubts. We were sentencing Sophia to a lifetime aboard this ship, he said, and punching a one-way ticket for her children to a dangerous, potentially deadly environment. I understand that, believe me, but the way I saw it, isn't the entire expedition premised on the notion that we have the right to determine the future of our descendants? That we have the right to decide that our children and their children will serve as the pioneers of New Earth? That they'll have a chance to begin all over again and get it right this time? She stared at him pleadingly, and her expression softened when he nodded. It's a difficult decision for everyone on the mission, he said. She stood and paced across the room. Are you sure you don't want to sit? He said. There's something else, she said, something I need to get off my chest. She sat down in a chair facing him, then averted her eyes. Go ahead, he said. A long pause followed. I was cheating on Mark. Go on. Mark and I had our share of arguments, but I love my husband, Doctor. Really, I did. The fling, I can't explain it. Now the words poured out of her. I met Stefan at a local coffee shop. He was a college kid, a German expat. I can't say we had much in common. He was 10 years younger than me. It started out as a harmless flirtation and then became a one-time mistake. Everyone's entitled to one mistake, right? And after the first mistake, what's one more? And then one more after that. She smiled ruefully. We began seeing each other. She stopped suddenly, clearly expecting him to make some judgment about her extramarital activities. But when he stayed quiet, she continued. I eventually won the argument with Mark about our future, about our daughter's future. He agreed we'd join the Seed's crew just as we'd always planned, and that Sophia's life would be dedicated to a greater purpose. Good for me, right? She said bitterly. We made our arrangements and said our final goodbyes to family and friends and tied up all the loose ends of our lives in anticipation of leaving Earth for good. One happy family sailing off into the cosmos. She stood up and began pacing again. Mark never found out about Stefan. Is this something you feel you need to confess to him? Emilio imagined waking the poor fool asleep in his REM pod, oblivious to his wife's deception, being shaken awake, told the bad news, then placed back into stasis. She sniffled and shook her head almost imperceptibly. No. You've been having nightmares, he prompted. There's this song. Mark used to sing it to Sophia at bedtime. She cleared her throat. When the wolf's in town, it gobbles you down, down. She bared her teeth, made a snapping sound. Down. He flinched. This was a kid's song? Since I woke up, I've started hearing it coming out of the seed's ventilators, a high note, a lower one, and then another. The other day, I swore I heard it in the elevator, except the elevators on the seed don't play music. Crazy, huh? She caught herself, clearly unhappy with the word she'd chosen. He'd heard of psychological priming, a past stimulus coloring a person's future response to similar experiences, making them see numbers or patterns that didn't really exist, but not manifested this way with music. That's not all, she said. I'd been dreaming of something twisted, dirty, a shadow that follows me wherever I go, just out of sight. And the past 2 days, I've sensed it even when I'm awake. I'm afraid it's been freed from my mind, set loose on the seed. It's after me. It wants to punish me. I see, he said. And what exactly is this thing that's after you? She bit her lip. A monster? That's all I know. It hides in the dark, but if I pay attention, I can see movement, black within black, out of the corner of my eye. I saw it clearly, just once, for a second. If I stare directly at it, it disappears. He removed his scribbler from his pocket and handed it to her. Can you draw what you saw? She stared at the hexagonal device. Is this library tech? He nodded. Good, because I'm a lousy artist. She dragged her index finger along the surface for a few seconds until the device read her intentions and made adjustments to the image on its own. She handed it back to him. At first, I caught a glimpse of it crouching behind the REM pod stacks, she said. Then I spotted the shadow at the far end of a corridor, distant enough that I wasn't sure it was real, about 8 feet tall, shrouded in a black mist. It had this stench of rotting flesh. But what truly scared me, was when it spoke. It whispered profanities, promised to skin me alive. I know how this sounds, doctor. I'm not an idiot. I know what you're thinking, the same thing I'm thinking, that I'm hallucinating, that it's not real, that it's just my guilt getting the better of me. I woke you, in fact, to convince me of this, to prove I'm imagining it, that it's all in my head, because the alternative, her lower lip twitched. I'm afraid that the hallucination, if that's what it is taking over. She leaned forward, her face inches away from his. The monster's creeping closer and closer every time I see it. And in the end, if I believe it's real, if I believe strongly enough, it doesn't much matter whether it's actually real, right? That's why I need you to make me stop believing. He stared at the sketch on the scribbler. The image resembled a diseased black bird, a huge shroud with a tattered outline, only it bore a human head and a face that looked just like Angie's. I'll stop there and I'll give you a mild spoiler. The doctor is successful in treating Angie. She stops seeing the monster, but then he starts seeing it. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
That's a great.
Oh, wow. That was so much fun. Wow.
Thank you so much.
Wow.
Yes.
Thanks. It's hard to pick what to read because most of my works tend to be pretty long.
Yes. Yes.
We only have about 10 or 12 minutes here, so I tried to pick just a section of the novel that I thought was suitably creepy for this venue.
Oh yes, that was wonderfully creepy. Yeah. And that brings me the thing I was thinking about while we're listening to this is that many people say that being out in space on a generational ship like that, going somewhere, it's like the ultimate horror kind of scenario because there's no way back. There's nowhere else to go. You can't just open the door and leave.
That's
right. What do you think about that?
You make a decision and you're stuck with it. Not just you, but as in the story they mentioned that your descendants as well. Their lives become whatever paradise or horror awaits.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
That's sort of my pings my fear of cruises.
Mhm.
And that was before there was respiratory issues. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness, that was exciting.
Yeah. So now this was originally published in Asimov's.
This was published in Asimov's a couple years ago. It won their Reader's Choice Award for the fans picked it as their favorite novelette for the year.
Oh, cool.
I can see why. Yeah.
It was republished in Neil Clark's Year's Best Science Fiction, Volume 5. If anybody wants to pick that up and
Oh, nice.
read the rest of it, it's
Awesome.
it's fairly long, but quite gets scarier and scarier.
Ooh, terrific.
Yeah.
So, okay, now I can't help but wonder now, what about this little girl who's in, is she in suspended animation for the flight at the age of 4? What happens to her? And
Well, there's a big reveal.
Don't tell us to don't give up the end.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say that she has a lot more to feel guilty about than just having an extramarital affair. There's a lot
Okay.
more
Oh, okay.
Okay.
relating to her family. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh
Good.
boy.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually curious. I haven't read your novel. Is it Worgen? Is that
Worgen,
right?
the Alien Love War. Yeah, there's
Okay.
the whole thing about that.
But your bio teases the humanity's complicated relationship with an enigmatic alien species. Can you give us a little bit of an insight into the relationship without giving too much away?
Absolutely. I've been writing stories in this universe for over 20 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I started writing them back in 2004. The premise is that there's first contact with this alien species, and they are biochemically drawn to human beings. They're infatuated with them to the point where they're willing to give us their superior technology, which humanity loves. Of course, humanity finds the aliens kind of off-putting, and they don't want to really be around them. But they reach this compromise where they get their superior technology in exchange for forming a partnership with them. So they have to put up with the aliens who they find revolting, but the aliens are kind of like, googly-eyed for the humans. So it gives me a chance to explore all facets of love. The stories really are stories about unrequited love. They're love stories. They're stories about familial relationships or love for a pet, or basically every aspect of love you can think of. And in the backdrop, there's the story of the humans and the Worgens, and of course, it turns, as it must, you can tell from the title, it turns into a war between humanity and the Worgens ultimately.
Okay.
Well,
But it was a nice platform to again explore different facets of love.
it's perfect to talk about that the day before Valentine's Day. So yeah. Very
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Yes.
Yeah, happy Valentine's Day. Yeah.
I was just thinking an entire alien race infatuated with humans, that's not going to have any negative effects on human egos at all.
Oh no, of course we behave wonderfully.
No, yeah.
So,
what could possibly go wrong? Go wrong.
So have the stories you've been writing in that universe been collected anywhere, or are they just been published in different venues?
They've been published primarily in Inner Zone magazine and in 2 or 3 different anthologies.
Okay.
And then what I did was I turned them all into a mosaic novel. That's Worgen, the Alien Love War.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's
12 interconnected stories, and there is a plot arc that cuts across all 11 stories.
Okay.
Smack dab in the middle of it is this giant novella as well. So it's a pretty lengthy book, but it does have an arc, and it's a romantic arc, believe it or not. It's the courtship, falling in love, getting married, breaking up, getting a divorce, and then is there reconciliation at the end or not? You have to read to find out. So
got to get there and see. Well, and that's just another wonderful case of mixing genres, even though it's one specific thing, it's got life in there. I just have to show you one of our comments, not Valentine's Day, Valian's Day. Thank you, Epiphany. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's great. That's very cool.
Well, tell us a little bit too about the podcast, the Nerd Count podcast, which you do with Matthew. Matthew was on reading with us last month.
Yeah, Matt and I have been part of the same speculative writers group for many years, and we decided to create our own podcast to talk about just basically all things nerd, but beyond that, from a writing perspective, since we both we're both writers, and we like to just tackle from the writing perspective. How we interview writers, talk about their difficulties and the fun part about writing, the hard part about writing, some of the obstacles that have to be overcome, And anytime we talk about social, anything that's out there, movies or books, we always talk about it from a writing perspective.
Oh, yeah.
That's the angle. And we've been pretty good. We've been coming out bi-weekly, and
Wow, that must be tough to keep that schedule.
It is.
Yeah.
We're already on the edge. I think we have one due soon, so we're gonna start recording the minute we finish this. So
That's it. We're holding you back.
In your spare time. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So it's nerdcountpodcast.com, right? I just put that in the
It's a terrible pun
folks.
on the word. It's terrible pun on word count.
Nerd count.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering. I'm thinking.
I knew I liked you.
But I'm not, hip on all the latest terminology. So, but I'm wondering, so now you've written primarily science fiction, and we were talking earlier about a lot of people who come on Galactic Terrors write in different genres. Do you go outside SF at all?
I do occasionally. I mean, I will say that sci-fi is my sweet spot. Short stories are my sweet spot. But I will occasionally drop a horror story or a fantasy story. And ironically enough, one of the few horror stories that I wrote was nominated for the World Fantasy Award back way back when, called Tu Sufrimiento Shall Protect Us. It's about the idea of torture being used as magic to keep cities safe. I wrote it during the time of the Guantanamo Bay situation. The idea that if you can literally keep yourself safe if you just have somebody you can torture. So the dark magic keeps safe.
Yeah, as one does. Yeah.
Yes.
That's a very provocative premise. Yeah, that's great. And do you have why is it that short stories are your sweet spot? Do you Rebecca talked a little bit about why she loves it. So
what's your jam?
You know what? This is. I think I get tired of ideas after a while. I don't think I can't stick with them for more than 50 pages, and after that, I kind of get bored with the concept. Ironically enough, since I have a book out that, but again, it's a mosaic novel, right? Stories. Yeah. So I think that's what it is. It's just that I feel like I can tell a story in that page limit and that page length, and that just feels comfortable for me. And I do like, as she said, I do like that arc. That's sweet, smooth arc, be it a character arc or a plot arc.
Yeah. And which typically is your provoking incident in your head? Is it the character? Is it the plot? Is it just an image? What gets you going on a story?
I'm a plot person. Most of my friends are character people, but I'm a plot person. I come up with my concepts, and it flows from that. The characters flow from that. I'm also a compulsive outliner, which is strange for short stories.
Yeah.
I just love to outline.
I did know I liked you. Yeah.
And I can spend weeks outlining out. And then once the outline is finished, and my outline is usually a page. Once the outline is finished, I feel like I've finished the story. All it's left to do is just write it. So, but
is it still fun to write it once you finish the outline? Or are you tired of it by then?
It is. And folks who don't like that approach will say, it's constraining and I feel straitjacketed if I write an outline and I have to stick to it. And my answer always is, we'll just change the outline, because that often happens as I'm writing the story. I will veer off and I'll change the outline and the reason I like the outline is because it helps me write with direction. I don't feel like I ever get trapped. Like I always know where the direction the story is heading to. But a lot of people don't like that. But that's just my personal style.
Yeah. I consider myself an aspirational outliner, as in I probably should outline, but my experience with outlining is then I feel like I've told the story, and when I go to write it, I want to tell a different story or a different version of the story. And so, like you said, just change the outline, which I've done. But then I start to think, well, I'm just going to write the story twice. I'll skip the outline. And,
as long as it comes out okay.
Yeah. I've heard that too. That people say, once I've written the outline, I don't want to write the story because I feel like I've written the story already.
Done already. Yeah. Check it off. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, because I see you a lot of fantastic fiction at KGB Bar in New York City. It's the long-going reading series that Matt Kressel and Ellen Datlow put together, and you're involved with them as well as a alternate host and all. What is it that you like about attending readings and listening to authors reading their work? What is it that appeals to you for that?
I just love the atmosphere of being around other writers and other, not that they're all writers there, but they tend to be industry people. I like the energy of it. I like to, and listening to the stories. I love hearing a complete story. That's my personal. I read an excerpt today, but a lot of times
we have a short time limit for you. Sorry. Yeah.
no, that's fine. But at KGB, there's usually about a 25-minute limit, and that gives you more room. You might have to actually be able to read a complete short story in that time limit, and I love when that happens because I love getting the whole story told and reacting to it. But I love the environment. I love the fact that it's such a small space, and sometimes you have 100. Maybe during the pandemic, it wasn't so great, but we would, 100 people jammed into a little space, and it's dark, and I just love it. I love everything about it.
And even if everyone who comes isn't a writer, I think they're almost all, probably, if not all, readers.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's it's such a great energy, like you said, just to have people who appreciate writing and storytelling and stories in one place to just kind of enjoy it.
Yeah. How often do you get like an immediate reaction to a short story? I mean, never.
Yes.
That's great.
It's excellent feedback, and you hope it's good. You hope it's a good reaction, that they're still paying attention. Nobody's checking their watch at 10 minutes, but yeah.
Oh, you want them to gasp in the appropriate place. And
we've had some really great readings over the years. I mean, people accompanied by a guitar, somebody playing a saxophone, somebody with a puppet, just all sorts of presentations. But just hearing a good story is there's nothing like it.
Yeah. And the really cool thing is that, having just heard you read this story and I hear your voice when I pick up your book and I read some more of your stories, I'm going to hear them in your voice, which is going to be really fun. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your words. No, it's really cool.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Shall we bring Charles and Rebecca back on to?
Let's have them come on with us. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. This has been such a great evening of readings. You guys are terrific.
So, and I just want to call out a comment. Let's see who, Rebecca in our behind the scenes chat commented on the variety of the readings tonight. And I love that too.
Yeah, it's quite true. And all right, I have to tell this quick story. When I was a Girl Scout leader, from the time my Girl Scouts were in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, we would do some sort of project, and I didn't want them all to do exactly what I told them to do with a craft project. So I would give them stuff, and I would always praise them and say, "Wow, this is so cool! We gave you this stuff, and each of you did something completely different." And one of the gals said, "Oh, Ms. Gyzander, you always say that." It's like, well, it's true. That's why. So, but that's what's really cool. You all brought your stories, and they're all very different, and yet have a wonderful sense of heart to them. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. So let's find out what everyone has coming up next. We'll start with Charles, and I did promise we would hear more about Lich. So Charles, I know that's coming up for you in what, two or 3 weeks?
So Lich is February 28th, March 1st, March 2nd. We've got about 50 hours of programming. We've got a dealer's room that is going to be stuffed to the gills. We've got music. We've got 2 parties going on during it. So Patrick, who's the main organizer, has just done a breathtaking job, and he's brought in people from video games, from movies, from comic books, from book publishing, and I contributed 1 or 2 people myself, and I was fortunate enough to help design the programming for it, which has been tremendous fun. It's been a long time since I've run a convention, and while, like I said, Patrick's running it, I get to do all the fun parts of running it. I get to get everyone set up and chat with everybody and be everybody's buddy. Of course you can be on this panel. Let's put you on this panel. And it's also nice that both Carol and James are going to be guests of horror at Lich.
Ooh, yes.
And I'm very happy to have you guys there.
Well, I'm absolutely thrilled to be part of it. I know how long Patrick has been working on this because we started. He started telling me about it. It must be two or more years ago, and it takes a lot to bring something like that to fruition and to really get it off the ground. Mm-hmm. So,
like I said, I got all the easy parts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, you actually have a question about Lich from James Ryan. Has programming for Lich been posted online?
So we finally got everything approved to the final detail last night, every last minute change and swap. So it's not online, but if you guys want to hit me on Facebook, I will share all the information because I'm allowed to now. And Patrick should have it up today or tomorrow on the website.
Cool.
Okay, so it'll be online soon. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Great.
All righty.
Okay.
No,
I
that's
got a
awesome.
few other things.
Oh, no, and I was just going to say, Patrick is so cool because he knows so many people, and I've been to conventions in the past that he's been very involved with, and I think I'm really looking forward to this one. So,
yeah.
There we go.
So the other stuff that's coming up with me is in February, I have a Western coming out called The Old Prune's Nephew. Shadow Without Light, which I read from tonight. I'm going to be doing a reading at the Shade Bar with the HWA New York chapter at the end of the month on Sunday.
On the
then
23rd.
in March, I've got,
yes,
on the 23rd. In March, I've got The Sunken War, which finishes off my second horror trilogy. I've got Kleptogenesis Mission Antarctica, which once again, Ian did almost all the writing on, but I'm just happy to have my name involved. I was involved with plotting and developmental editing and things like that. Then I've got The Greek coming out, which is another Western, and Marshall Theo Starr versus the Clover Gang, which you might guess is a Western. And then about a million collabs, one with John Frater, one with Lara Frater, one with Terry Hill, one with Samara Hunt, another one with Ian Herrick, another one with Eric Aversidian. I've got a dead one with Gordon Winsner that I'm hoping will bring back to life. And with Anne Stolinsky, I'm going to be doing Dr. Cryptid's House Calls of Horror, which will be a humor horror one. That's all my stuff coming up.
Awesome. And I assume somewhere in there you'll find time for maybe an hour or so of sleep.
I've heard of sleep.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's very cool.
Terrific.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
lots of stuff to look for.
Cool. Rebecca, what about you? You told us a little bit. What's coming up?
Yeah.
Well, first, I just want to apologize because a few minutes ago I made a face and lunged because my cat fell off the bed next to me and I had to catch him because he was just sort of hanging there. So I've got Barnaby safely in my lap now. Okay, so I'll be at Spirited Giving March 27th, and I'll be at AuthorCon. But as far as publications, the 2025 titles coming out, my second spooky children's book is going to be out in September or October. This one is High Up on Witch Mountain. And those are through AEA Press and Malediction. And the first one came out in November, and that was that title, Down in the Dark Deep Where the Puddlers Dwell. So there will be 6 of them all told, about one a year over the next few years. Yep. Cool. And those are all illustrated by Dakota Marquardt, and she's amazingly talented. So if you don't get the books for the story, get them for the art because they're absolutely worth it. And then I've got a ghost story collection coming out in October or November called The Hauntings Back Home. And that's coming out through My Press, Undertaker Books.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, and I just started a new YouTube series. Just posted our first show called Girl Meets Gothic. And that's on the Horror Realm channel. So my first guest was Lucas Marino. And I know he's got a lot of fans. He's a really great guy. So Elsie Marino is my first guest.
Yeah. So Rebecca, the audio got just a little bit distorted there for a second. If you could just tell us the name of that again and where people can find it. Yeah.
Sure. The show is called Girl Meets Gothic, and it is on the channel Horror Realm on YouTube.
Cool.
Cool.
All right.
Cool.
Great. That's plenty of stuff to keep you busy for sure.
Plenty to keep me busy. Yeah.
Well, is Barnabas named after Barnabas Collins by any chance?
He is not. His name is Barnaby Jones, and he's named after detectives on Midsummer Murders.
Got it. All right. Mercurio, what have you got coming up that we should look out for?
Well, I have a novella that I collaborated on with Matthew Quetzel that sold to a major market. I can't see the market yet because I haven't signed the contract yet.
That's okay.
we did get the galleys, and we did mark those up. But it's a massive novella about AI, which I guess is timely. But it's sort of like Silence of the Lambs, I would say. It's this really insidious AI that is kept in the lunar base underground. And a psychologist, kind of like in my story, psychologist is sent to psychoanalyze the AI to make sure that nothing like it is ever created again. So that's the basic premise of it.
That sounds great. You can do a crossover at some point with all of Charles' stories on the moon.
That's right. That's right. That's funny.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be cool.
And you can just look for the Nerd Count podcast every couple of weeks, anywhere you listen to podcasts. And Worg and the Alien Love War, it came out a few years ago, but it was just re-released with a new cover after it was nominated for the Arthur C. Clarke Award,
Very nice.
Which is like
Cool.
the UK's version of the Hugo Award.
Yes.
As a brand new cover, and so you can find that anywhere, like Amazon or wherever.
Fantastic. All right.
Cool. That's
Carol, how
right.
about you? I think you have some stuff coming up, of course.
There's a couple things, but one of the fun things is we're doing a special episode of Galactic Terrors coming up on Monday the 24th, and that's going to be about dark spores, stories we read after midnight, and that's volume 4, and that's mushroom horror. And so Chuck really got us going on it. We were so upset. We got so many fabulous stories for this anthology and could not take them all, and we were just dying. So thank you for putting your story out there, Chuck. That's really a cool story. I really enjoyed listening.
I've done anthologies, and yeah, you cut stuff you love all the time. It's very hard.
It's like, it's like editing. You got to kill your darlings, it's just crazy. So we're going to be doing that on the 24th here on that's a Monday night, with some of the authors coming on for that. And also I'm doing another event for that at Stanza Books in Beacon, New York, and that's coming up on Saturday, March 8th. And we will I put the link in the chat there. That's a fun thing. We've got Jim Chambers has a story in the anthology, and we've got Nicholas Kaufman and Teal James Glenn and Megan R. Curry are all going to be sharing a little bit of their words about dark spores at Stanza Books. And that's a cool bookstore that really supports horror and does a ton of great activities and such. So looking forward to that very much.
Yeah.
And
I think
Jim,
and then there's the Shade Bar reading on February 23rd, right?
That's another event on a Sunday, and that's down in the West Village. And so we have a bunch of our great authors from the New York chapter of HWA are coming to read. That starts at 6 o'clock for those of you who are in the New York area. We have Oliver Bear, guess what? Charles Barouch, Teal James Glenn, Kirsten Petrus, Amy Greck, myself will be there. Linda Ann Losciavo is one of our new members, is a poet bringing some work. And Chris Ryan is bringing some poetry as well. So that's something that we're looking forward to coming up for those of you who are in our local area and can get into the city and see us there. We'd love to have you join us. So thanks so much for that.
Do not put me on immediately after Teal. I cannot follow that act.
No, Teal's a very hard person to follow. Yeah. It would be like following Clay Chapman in some ways. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if Chris is listening or he might listen to the recording, but Chris Ryan showed up late for a reading at Shade Bar once, so I made him go on after Teal.
Oh, he got held up in traffic, trying to get into the city. Oh my gosh, it's awful. I felt so bad, Just picture you want to be there, you want to be reading, and you're stuck in oh well. Yeah. So Jim, what's going on with you? What do you have coming up?
Well, I'll be participating in some of the promotions for Dark Spores, which includes my story, The Epigeus Dead. And what else do I have coming up? I have a bunch of stuff, that I can't quite announce yet. Yeah, in the works. I mean, it's not Galactic Terrors if at least 2 people don't have stuff they can't talk about.
Yes, or see a cat. Yeah,
Right. But Weird House Press is publishing a novella collection, anthology, 4 novellas, Zombie Horde, and I wrote a novella for that called Necropolitan. which is about a group of necromancers who turn producer in an attempt to take over the world through a movie that's cursed. And I'll say no more, but that's certainly, if you're into zombie horror, you should check that one out. And hopefully I'll have more to report next month.
Yeah. Well, that sounds pretty cool. Yeah. I look forward to hearing some more about that. So, and you're doing a lot of work on Stoker Con, and you and Brian Matthews are sort of a core group that goes from convention to convention and passes the word. And then the local chapter takes a lot of the big meat of it, right?
We have a fantastic crew in Connecticut. I think it's now officially the New England chapter. They recently broadened and changed the name of the chapter up there. But we've got a great group of con chairs. Logan Johnson, John Opalenik, Michelle Bullock, and a group of people who are helping out also with various aspects of the con and trying to bring some New England and Connecticut flavor to Stoker Con.
Ooh,
so that should be fun.
Yeah.
That's cool. And I guess I'll also be appearing at Lich and on some panels. I'm really happy that you took one of my panel suggestions, Charles, about the 10 great events in horror.
I'm very excited to see what you do with it.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. Yeah. And I'm just dying to do this. We mentioned the thing up at Stanza Books, but look at this really creepy, wonderful. Look at the thing that he put together for us. All the mushroom folks are in green. It's like so there's dark spores.
I love it.
I just had to share that because it's so
like we're all in a 70s B movie about mushroom horror.
Yeah.
Green tint on. Those are the mushroom people.
Yes, mushrooms are the big thing. Yeah.
There's a new science fiction noir novel called Mushroom Blues, which is it's about mushroom based aliens. So it just goes to show that mushrooms are in vogue these days. They're the new zombies.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Fungus or among us.
Exactly. Well, listen, guys, we had so much fun talking to you. We ran over our usual time because, this was just such a great evening of readers and words and conversation. So thank you for sharing your time and your talent and your mental treasure.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely.
This was fun.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you to our audience. Thank you for tuning in. And for those of you who joined us for the first time, we really happy to have you and hope you'll come back for future broadcasts. Next month, our regular Galactic Terrors transmission will be on March 13th, featuring Anastasia Garcia, Sam Rebeline, and we teased him on the beginning, Stephen Van Patten. I think.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sounds good.
So we hope to see you then.
Yes, terrific. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Have a great evening, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.